you have ever felt this, if you have been busy every day and still had no clear sense of who you were actually building your life for, if you had a decent salary, a respectable job, and a life that looked fine from the outside, but still carried a quiet kind of exhaustion inside, then do not be too quick to blame yourself. You are not lazy, you are not broken, and you are not failing just because something inside you still feels off. Sometimes the real problem is simpler than that. You are not lacking effort. You are just spending your life on things that do not grow. In the wealthiest city along the western trade routes, there was a place called the Market of Rising Wind. Its docks, workshops, guild towers, and exchange halls never seemed to sleep. Young people from every province moved through it in clean clothes and fast footsteps, carrying ledgers, proposals, blueprints, and polished ambition. From the outside, the city looked like it ran on gold, speed, ownership, and innovation. But what it really burned through was something else. Time. Arin arrived there when he was 24. He had graduated from a prestigious school and entered one of the most admired technical guilds in the city. The salary was high enough to impress his peers and calm his family. For a while, when he passed polished windows and caught his own reflection, he honestly believed he was watching success begin. But not long after, something inside him started thinning out. It was not because he was bad at the job. Actually, he was good. He worked fast, wrote sharp proposals, spoke well in meetings, and steadily became the kind of person others described as promising. And still, every time he stayed late and looked down through the glass walkways above the lit office floors, he felt the same strange discomfort. It was like standing inside a huge machine and slowly realizing that even if it was powerful, even if it ran beautifully, the dream it served might not be yours. The moment that finally stopped him came on a rainy night. His team had stayed late to push a new system toward launch. By 2 a.m, only a few lights were still on, and the city outside had turned into a sheet of cold reflections. Arin sat at the conference table, stared at a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, and said something he had not planned to say out loud. Sometimes I feel like I'm just working on someone else's dream, using up time I'll never get back. The room went quiet. The next evening, one of his co-workers led him through the older northern streets of the city and stopped in front of an unmarked warehouse. Its outer walls had been worn pale by sea wind and years. Inside, there was no luxury, only shelves rising almost out of sight, dim hanging lamps, and a stillness that felt untouched by urgency. His co-worker did not go in with him. He only said, "You're not the first person to feel like a gear. There's someone inside who's better at answering that kind of question." Deep in the warehouse sat a man at a plain wooden table. There was a lamp, an old ledger, and a city map laid flat in front of him. He did not look like a teacher or a businessman. He looked like someone who had watched enough people succeed and fail to stop caring about performance and start caring about structure. His name was Kale. Arin sat down and, without much energy left for politeness, repeated what he had said the night before. "I feel like I'm using my time to power systems that aren't mine, and I don't know how to get out. I don't even know what I should be building." Kale closed the ledger and asked one question. "What exactly are you selling right now?" Arin frowned. "Skill?" Kale shook his head. "No. You're selling time. Skill is only what makes your time more expensive." That landed hard, because Arin knew it was true. Kale told him that most people spend their whole lives trapped at that level. They think a high salary means they've become valuable. Often it only means they've become a very useful gear. Useful, expensive, hard to replace for a while. Still a gear. As long as you are trading hours for income, your growth stays mostly linear. You work more. You earn more. You stop, the machine stops paying. Arin did not argue, because that was exactly where the fatigue was coming from. Then Kale turned the city map over and wrote a single line on the back. Positioning, talent, interest, value, leverage. Arin stared at it. At first it looked like a business formula. Kale told him it was more than that. It was a personal framework for anyone who wanted to build a life that eventually led to freedom. And it mattered that it was multiplication, not addition. Because if one part collapsed towards zero, The whole thing weakened with it. Arin asked why they were not starting with leverage. Wasn't everyone saying this was the age of media, platforms, and personal brands? KL gave a small smile. Because most people want scale before they know what is actually worth scaling. Then he asked the first real question. Before anyone paid you, before anyone graded you, what did you naturally want to do? Arin almost could not answer. He was too used to replying with resume language. Degrees, skills, projects, promotions. But that was clearly not what KL meant. After a long silence, Arin admitted that when he was younger, what absorbed him most was not getting high marks. It was taking complicated things apart, figuring out how they worked, and then explaining them in a way that made sense to other people. He could do that for hours without noticing time passing. KL nodded. That's a clue. Talent is rarely some dramatic gift. Most of the time, it is just your natural way of seeing, organizing, and processing the world. It feels so normal to you that you assume it's nothing special. Then he added, one of the biggest wastes in life is not lacking talent. It's using your strengths to keep fixing a standard that was never built for you. That hit too, because what Arin was best at had never really been following process. It had been understanding complexity, then making it useful. And yet most of his energy had gone into becoming more polished, more standard, more employable. KL asked the second question. If no one paid you and no one applauded, would you still want to spend years doing it? This time Arin answered fast. If all he had to do was produce tidy reports that no one truly cared about, he would not want another day of it. But if the work was breaking down difficult systems and making them understandable for ordinary people, he could stay with that for a long time. KL said that was the second dimension. Interest, or more precisely, real inner fuel. Not what looks impressive, not what sounds prestigious. What keeps pulling you back even without immediate reward. Talent lets you do the thing. Interest lets you stay with it. Only when those two overlap does work start feeling less like labor and more like expression. But he did not let Arin settle there. That still isn't enough, he said. If your talent and interest are not connected to a real need in the world, all you have is an expensive hobby. Then he turned the map back over. It was marked not by roads or districts, but by gaps. Too much information, no clarity. Too much complexity, no translation. Too much change, no bridge. Huge demand, no trusted guide. KL said value did not come from pleasing everyone. And it did not come from choosing the safest task. It came from solving a real problem for a real group of people. You do not need to matter to the whole world. You only need to become truly useful to a specific set of people. Arin looked at the map and felt the third part click into place. There were thousands of people in Rising Wind who were smart, disciplined, and willing to learn, yet constantly trapped under language that was too dense and systems that were explained badly. They did not need motivation, they needed translation. They needed a bridge. KL saw it land and asked the last question. So how will you scale it? Arin said maybe he could move higher inside the guild, maybe become the most important person in the department. KL shook his head. That is still selling time. It is just selling it at a better rate. Then he led Arin behind the warehouse, where old wind wheels, rope lifts, and pulley systems were still working. Each mechanism by itself looked modest, but when they were linked together and set in motion, entire rows of heavy crates rose at once. That, KL said, is leverage. Without leverage, even brilliant people stay trapped in linear growth. With leverage, one piece of work can keep working after you stop touching it. For most people, the first leverage they can actually access is not capital, and it is not labor, it is media, a useful essay, a clear explanation, a lesson that can be replayed, a body of work people return to when they hit the same problem again. The moment your talent becomes something people can revisit, trust, share, and build from, you begin to move beyond selling time. Arin went home that night and could not sleep. For the first time, he was not thinking about promotion. He was thinking about what might happen if he aimed his real strengths at a real need. and used content to scale it. He did not quit his job. He did not launch a company. He simply began. He worked during the day. At night, he took the complex systems and market shifts he had been studying and rewrote them in a way ordinary people could actually understand. Not for experts, for the people just outside the gate. At first, almost no one paid attention, but he kept going, because this time, he was not forcing himself through work he hated. He was doing something that felt like play to him and solved a real problem for someone else. Slowly, people began remembering his name. Then they started forwarding his work. Then they started asking harder questions. Later, the writing turned into talks. The talks turned into frameworks. The frameworks became products. A year later, he still worked inside the same guild, but he was no longer dependent on it in the same way. His job had become one lens through which he observed the world. The thing he was building outside, it had become something else. An asset. It was not huge, it was not glamorous, but it was alive. And it was still growing while he slept. One night, he returned to the warehouse. Kale was still there, with the same ledger, the same lamp, the same map. Arin asked him whether freedom simply meant one day no longer working inside someone else's system. Kale answered, "Not exactly. Real freedom begins when you stop selling your non-renewable time to things that do not compound." He told Arin that nearly every meaningful return in life came from compounding. Trust, skill, reputation, relationships, wealth. So every serious decision could eventually be reduced to one question: will this make tomorrow's version of me more free? If the answer was no, even a safe option could become dangerous. If the answer was yes, even a small beginning was worth respecting. That night, the wind over Rising Wind was fierce. Flags across the high city cracked in the dark like old systems still demanding obedience. But Arin already knew he would not remain just another polished gear, because he finally understood that wealth was not luck. It was the return the world wrote back to you after you created real value. Happiness was not some prize waiting at the end. It was the quiet stability that grew inside you as you moved closer to who you actually were. And freedom was not a gift that arrived one day without warning. It was a door you built for yourself by finding your strengths, scaling them with leverage, and making compounding choices again and again. This is Otherworld Radio. You are not lacking effort. You just cannot keep selling time forever. Find the thing that feels like play to you and creates real value for the world. Then build it in a way that lets it grow without costing you your whole life every hour.